Right, guys. We're going to explain you about a little bit about inheritance again, and then we can start the same concept in programming. Now, as I said, why we use inheritance is the main purpose is first. Let me give you the idea is to reuse the code. Okay, so I mean, if any code is written and I want to reuse the code, so that's the main purpose. And the answer is to extend, okay, certain more functionality, to extend more features, okay, or functionalities. That's the main purpose of inheritance, and that's one of the pillar of OOPS. Now, let's take example to make you understand in this one. For example, let's say for example in a company, okay, they are, let's say in a college you have teachers, you have students, right? Now students um, and lecturers, they both have a common field, like they have a common field, like say for example you want to store them what name, isn't it, address, then you can say for example um, like say age, okay, date of birth, okay, and whatever. So you have some of the common thing which is common to, for you're going to store common things for what you call for teachers and students. Now we saw you last class when you're making it actually all this variable and making a class. So let's say this is, I will call it as person, okay, so this is person class. um, you made it. Now say, now for example for students, now when you're going to store about the student, when you want to store about the students, so you think, okay, I'm going to make a student class, but now in the student class, you're going to store about in the name, address, age, date of birth. Of course you're going to store all these details, isn't it? So instead of writing all these things into the students again, what you can do is you can inherit like this, and this is a design of inherit. So this is, once you make like this, that's called inherit. And now once in programming also you have to write inherit, but once you inherit, what does it mean? That physically these variables along with getters and setters will not be coming into um, students, but you have to think that physically is not coming, but you have to understand logically that this is now a part of this one. So meaning you have to think that this is already there. Okay, physically it is there, but you have to understand that logically it is a part of that one. So in when you think logically, that means you don't have to rewrite these variables or getters and setters again in this class. So it's saving you time, and you're reusing the code. So whatever code, whatever's getters, okay, whatever getters or setters or whatever extra functions are there, all that functions will be part of the student. So you think that all these functions, getters, setters, and all this thing is a part of that one. And in extra for student, for example, you'll say, okay, I want to for student I want to record subject. So only that extra functionality which you want to store it, you're going to declare it like this here. So you can say, okay, I want to store about the subject. Okay, then I'll say, okay, I will say about the marks, for example. Okay, so what marks, let's do two things. I want to store about this one. Now when it comes to lecturers or teachers, okay, so teachers is also going to inherit this class. The reason why, because for teachers also you're going to store name, address, age, date of birth, isn't it? It's the same thing. So instead of repeating in a new class, so suppose this is a teacher class, so instead of repeating this one, you just inherit the class. And when you inherit it, you have to understand that these things along with other functions members is a part of this class. You have to say logically it's a part of that. And in extra, whatever you want to store about that lectures, you can say. So for example, I'll say I want to store about the subject specialist. Okay, so what subject specialist this lecturer is. Now we're not going to store about the subject, isn't it? We're going to say, okay, which subject specialist this are. We're not going to store marks, because for lectures maybe I'll say, okay, what is the salary for them. Okay, so whatever different variable you want to store about it, you add that, and the rest one which is common, you just say inherit. So when you say inherit, you don't have to rewrite this variable again, or don't have to write use the getters and setters again, but logically you are, I mean, you have to say that this is included here. So that's the meaning called, okay, inherit here. So inherit meaning you have a something which is common, you're reusing the code, okay, not physically, logically, and that is what called inheritance here. So it saves a lot of space. Now I gave you some 4 or 5 variables. Just imagine if it's 100 variable and a lot of getters and setters and other functions are there. You can't just copy in real life. You can't If you're not using inheritance, you can't just copy all that thing in this class again. You repeat the same thing, and even if you repeat it, that means you're making redundant. Redundant mean lot of variables, lot of functions are like is reused, mean is redundant, mean repeated, and that's not a good style of programming. So meaning you make a one class and the one which is matching to both of it, so make a common class and then you inherit both the class here. Okay, so now this is what we need to understand. I'll show you to programming how to do it, but before we do more, let's teach you about the class relationships. Okay, so if we say about the class relationship now, that when we take two main class relationship, we need to understand. One is called aggregation and the other one is composition. Now let me give you the idea about composition. Composition meaning, let's say for example, yeah, when you're saying thinking about this relationship, this one is generally known as parent class and this is generally known as child class. Okay, now in composition, try to understand that if, okay, parent dies, okay, if parent dies, then child also has to die. Okay, child will also die. For example, I'm giving example. For example, a very good example is here, the one which I said it. So for example, just think about if for some chance, like for some reason, if this person class, okay, get deleted or this dies meaning that this parent class no more exist. Now if they don't exist, okay, then do you think will it be have any meaning about this I mean this student class? So in my regard, the student class has no meaning. You know, try to understand. In student, what do you store? You storing in class. What are you storing it? You're storing student and marks. But the rest one, you said you inherit from there. Okay, now physically you didn't bought it, but you logically you are linked with that one. So just imagine if that person dies, that means the name, address, age, date of birth will not be a part of this student anymore. So now the student class with only subject and marks doesn't make any meaning. Meaning, do you think is make meaning? So it doesn't make meaning. So that means this one will die definitely. And so if the child parent dies and the child dies, that is what called composition. Okay, and composition relationship is shown like this way. For composition is going to be shown. Let me write the thing here. So composition is shown like this. So suppose if this is the class called person, and I'm just going to show about the students. So student and person is making a composition relationship. I know is inherit. That inherit is that's a different relationship. But now that inheritance, if you want to understand in a relationship, then if you want to understand a relation, then the sign you're going to use it like this way. Okay, like this, and you have to fill it up here. So if you make a diamond like this, an arrow, and like this, that means we can say that student, okay, of course inherit like that mean you can say like that's inheritance is just this design I mean to say, but this design when you see it, meaning you say that these are showing class relationship, and the class relationship is composition mean if parent dies the student has to die. Okay, now you got the concept. What is aggregation then? It's just the opposite, meaning to say that like in aggregations, for example, if, okay, parent class die, then child class, okay, will not die. So if the parent dies, the child class will still exist. Let me say it like this way, still exist mean they doesn't have to die. Now let me give you this in what kind of relationships are there. I'll show you. Now aggregation doesn't generally inherit. Okay, I mean generally they don't inherit, because when you inherit, okay, part of that you inherit here. So generally inheritance, when you do the inheritance, they form a relationship called composition. Now let's say what is aggregation. Let's say you have a class called college. Okay, so here you have some attribute about the college, like for example college name, okay, college address, okay, license number, and you have another class called lecturers or teachers, okay, in which you have the complete detail about. I'm not talking about here, I'm taking another example here. So say you have a name, age, ID, address. So this is all about the teachers. Now I will say that teacher, okay, teacher is teaching in this college. Now see, I'm making an arrow here, arrow meaning not inheritance, it is called association. Okay, meaning I'm saying the teacher is teaching in this, that's it. Now, and this is not even inherit. Okay, so this is just I'm saying teaching here. So this is a separate class of teacher and this is a separate class for college. Now we know that if the parent class dies, like suppose I say, now this is related with that one, so this is again still parent and this is again you can say child. But now in this case if I say okay, if the college dies, I mean this class dies, okay, so do you think the lecturer's class has to die? Answer is no, the lecturer class doesn't have to die, because lecturer has all these informations is all containing about the lecturers. So even if that died, like it's not making this meaning, I mean, it's not making unmeaningful, meaning not making it like um, that it doesn't have a meaning. No, of course it has a meaning because it has a complete detail about the lecturers. So even if this is dies, the remaining class still has a complete information about the teachers. Now again repeat again here when I'm explaining here the previous one. If the person class dies, why child student class become meaningless? The reason is why, because if this you inherited it, it was linked with that. So if name, address, age gone, now only the child, the child class with only subject and marks, does it make sense that whose subject marks is it student or someone else? So without the name, without the address, without the age, without the okay date of birth, only subject class having subject and marks doesn't make sense. This is only complete if it's related with this one. So that kind of relation is called composition. But when parent dies, the child still exists, that's called aggregation. Now this is a kind of relationship, this one. Let me do one practical problem about this inheritance, and I'll show you that how um, advantages you're going to get in terms of reusing the code and to extend the more features about the class. Okay, so let's come to this, and this is what you have to do for the practical. So let's quickly go. So what I'm going to do is, note it guys, create a new project. Let's do in a new project. Okay, now make sure C# and we are going to do in console this time again. Okay, so console in the sense meaning it'll be okay is Windows, because we are doing in the Windows base, that's right, and not desktop, it should be console. When you say console, we're going to select console app, not framework, not we're going to select .NET framework. I told you console .NET framework. When you go this, okay, let me give a name as inheritance to explain the concept of inheritance, and we'll use the same example here. When you say create, they said it's already used by another project, so let's say I'll just say inherit. Okay, inherit, and let's go into the project. Now let me show you side by side here. For example, if you see this one, I told you guys, like we name, address, age, okay, is common to student as well as lecturer. So first we're going to make the base class. Okay, let's make a base class. Forget about the main program guys. Okay, this is the main program. I'm not going to use the main program. First let's start making class, and I showed you last class how to make a class. Go to the project, right click, and just say add new item. When you say new item, select a class. Let me select a class name as, I will say person. Okay, general person. So we say person, add it, and then here what we're going to do is we're going to add all the things whatever we know needed. So let me make simple actually. Okay, so we'll say first thing is private. Okay, I told you private, then string, and let's name. Not let me not take it at first name last time, forget about right now. Next, make it simple. Okay, so you're going to say the word private. Okay, then you can say is, we can take it as gender. Okay, then you take another one, private. Okay, and we can take it as string or what, like, okay, let's take date of birth. So now for date of birth, there's a separate data type called date of birth guys. Okay, so we can say date, so date time, so that, sorry, the data type is called date time, so we can say date time, and then we can say date of birth. So I'm just teaching another new data type. So if you want to store data type, sorry, date of birth, so you can say date time. That's a good, you can store it. Now what else we can want to store it according to the thing here? So we say address, age. Okay, forget about age, let's make it simple, address, or we can take it age, forget about address then. So but you can do that one. So private, and age is what, we can take it in integer. Okay, so we can say age. Okay, so we can declare like this. Okay, we can declare like this. And you want to add address, we can add the address. Okay, you can just add it, but just to understand, let's make it cut short to understand it. So we made a class called person which has a common data for all of it, for both the class, okay, for student as well as lecturer. Now you know what, we need the getters and setters for this. For example, I showed you how to make getters and setters. Right click, quick action refactoring, and then select the encapsulate but still use field, this one, not the use property. We don't need to use, we want this one. So once you select it, they make the getters and setters for me. And I saw that like they made it a very easily way of making getters and setters, and then done it. Okay, so we have a one complete class which consists of name, gender, now we want to make one more class for student which should have all this information. Okay, we need to have name, gender, everything. Okay, but apart from that, I need to store what, subject and marks. So now the inheritance concept says that if you already have a class with name, address, and all this thing, no need of creating a separate class containing all those data, all those data. No. So they're saying no, just make a class with a separate data which you wanted, and simply inherit that one. When you say inherit, that this will be a part of that. Now, the physically doesn't come, guys, but you need to understand that that is also a part of that. You have to assume that now this part is inside this one. Okay, so what we can do is like, now forget about person, we come to project here, right click and add new class, and we can say that this class is what, student. Okay, so I'll say this is another student class. Now we making a separate class, but now what did I told you, you are inherit the person class, isn't it? So how do you inherit? You give colon. When you give colon, it's called inherit. And when you say the word person, so that's the meaning here. So you're saying, okay, I want to inherit, colon meaning that you're making a student inherit person. That means when you say person, that all the thing about that thing is inside this now student. So in it's part of the student. So in what extra you want to store? So let's say I want to store apart from that, public string, and I'll say subject. Okay, now let's make simple, only one thing. I mean, I showed you more. I mean, I can add what, marks. Okay, and so let's say I just want to add only subject. I want to have the same detail but only extra subject. So I'll just think only about the extra which I'm adding it. The rest one, I want it, you don't have to rewrite it, you just say person. So what happened is the code is written there along with getters and setters. You have to understand that this is now a part of that. Okay, this is part of this class. So I just have to create only getters, setters for this one, the new one. So right click, quick action refactoring, the last one, and they make the getters and the setters. And the rest data from that person, guys, you have to think that is already there. The getters and setters is also part of that. So this is how you create a, what you call inherit. Now let's make another class. Right click, say add new items class. Let's make for now teachers. Now when it comes to teachers, you know, you saw it, that one. So again, I'll say this is also inherit, okay, person. So once you say person, inherit person, meaning what do you understand in this one? If you understand that everything of this one is now a part of the teachers, but apart from that, I want to store subject specialist and salary, for example. Okay, so I will say subject specialist string, so I'll just take at private. Okay, and I'll just say this is going to be stored as string. So I'll say sub underscore SPCL, subject specialist. Okay, let's for, or if you want to write the whole word, you can write it, no worry, it's already easier to remember, subjects. Okay, or subject underscore SPECIALIST specialist. Okay, and what else you want to store it? You want to store what is the salary, right? So I'll say this integer and salary. So these two extra details are there, but you need to understand, since you inherited, that means you have to understand that all that name, age, gender is a part of that, though it not looking physically, but is a part of that one. And then you need to make the getters and setters for this one. So we can go quick action refactoring, last one, and they make the getters and setters. Now you have to assume, guys, now you forget about that person, you know, like once you start doing programming, so forget about this person class, forget about it. You need to understand that I have a student class, okay, which consists all this thing, name, address, age, date of birth, and subject. You have to understand that I have a teacher class which contain name, address, age, date of birth, and then subject, specialist, and salary. So you have to say understand that there are two class which contain the common field and plus the new one, common one and the new one. Okay, though it is written separately, but you have to understand that is together. And of course it's physically separate, but you have to understand. So the answer, what I mean to say is here, that in the person, okay, all this one which is common to both the class, student and teacher, I don't have to write this code again there. Okay, so once this is written up here, so once I said the, in student, once I say that inherit person, that means all those data is a part of this class also. So you are not making redundant code, you are reusing the code. And second thing is you just enhancing the features, what extra thing you want to store it. Okay, so now we just need to understand before we write the program. So just understand guys, now forget about the person now, because you use that as to inherit in student and teacher. So now your main class is student and you have to say teacher. Now note it again, when you're saying student, you can access all this thing, name, address, age, date of birth plus subject. Okay, you can access everything. So you have to say all the previous one plus this one. Now though it is written in the person, but since you inherit, you can access it. Now let me show you this one. So once you're done this, now once we come the program guys, now let's say for example I want to make a object for student. So student class is called what, student. So I'll say student s1 for one student is equal to new student, and we made the one object guys. Okay, so once we make the object, I can make also this to object for teacher. So you can say teacher t1 is equal to new, okay, teacher, and this one. So we made two object, one for teacher, one for student. Now remember in student we only declared about what, we only declared physically what subject, but name and all this thing we haven't declared it, but we told that it is inheriting person. So now that when you inherit, that's a part of the student. So how would you see, how was the proof? So now if I say s1 dot, if I want to put the name inside it, see the property is there, yeah, guys. This is called property. Okay, the getters and setters is like a property. So I'll say this name is equal to, I can say okay, this is Amjad. Okay, now I'll say s1 dot, whatever you can say, you can access like age. So you can say age, okay, this I gave it here. Then you can say s1 dot date of birth. Now when you say date of birth, you have to give date of birth like this, for example 2704, okay, 19, okay, 65 for example. Okay, so we need to give details like this. So the date of birth. Now when is like, say they said like, see, they're giving an error, the string cannot be converted this. If they don't, what we need to do is we can use like this function which will help you make your life easier. So you say convert to date time, and then what you do is you just keep it inside the function, it will convert that string into date of time. Okay, so this is very easy of giving date of birth here. Then we can say s1 dot gender. Okay, gender equal to, we can say male. So we can say male. Okay, and that's it. So like that. Now see, this was the comment from the person, you remember, but now we can access it with the student class. Why? Because that inherited. And extra now we had when the student, so about the subject, so we can say also subject, okay, is equal to, let's say if I say about computing, so example, okay, done, job done. So what I mean to say is like, try to understand again guys, that in the person it had all these variables. Okay, it wasn't there in the student, and in the student I needed to use this one. So instead of rewriting in the student, what we did is we said inherit person. So you have to see that all this came inside here, and only thing the extra which I want to store, I declared that subject. But when I'm showing in the main program, see, I can, when I created object, I can access, I can store name, age, date of birth, this, everything I can store it. Okay, now let's store about the lecturers. For example, if you want to say about the lecturers, you want to show, now lecturers, I can access all these things, but I can't access the subject. They will be having a different thing. So I will say, yeah, let's say about this one t1, this is t1. So I'll say t name t name is equal to, let's say John for example. Okay, you can say T1 age is, let's say you can say is 42. Oh, I didn't close the bracket here. And so you can say again a T1 date of birth is equal to whatever you can give it here. Okay, and so you can say T1, which is common. You can see the same thing will be their male. But now when you say T1 subject, it'll be wrong because T1 didn't had any subject. Note it. So T1 had what? T1 dot for the teacher, it was something called subject specialist, isn't it? Subject specialist is equal to, I'll say computing, and then I'll say T1 dot salary, it had salary, so they'll show you something all that related here. Salary is equal to, we'll say 40,000 of this one. Okay, so once we got all these things like this, see, so what the advantage you're getting is that from one base class you're creating two class and you are reusing the variables which is common to both of it, and that's the main purpose of inheritance, to reuse the code. And then if I want to print it, of course for the teachers or for the printing, if you want to print it, just print it. You know how to print it, like you can say console. Okay, in two checks, I'm just to show you console dot write line. Let me, I'll say student name, and where's the student name? So now when you say, when the student name you want it, okay, how would you print in C#? One thing remember guys, you know, after student name I want the student name here, so I'm just going to tell you how the exactly print. You have to give like this 0 and this one. You know the meaning of this one is that I want to print the name at this position. You know, when you see give 0 meaning you print want to print at this position. So comma, what is the printing? So you'll say s1 dot name. So when you say s1 dot name, meaning you're telling that the student one name will appear at this point. You know, this is the 0 in bracket curly bracket, mean at this point you need this one. So that is showing the location where I need to print it. Now let me quickly with print the rest of the stuffs. Control V, Control V, Control V, Control, just to show you the proof that is working or not. So next one I'm going to take it as age, and I'll say okay, S1, you can delete it and you can say point, they will show you the age. Okay, then student, what's that? Student name, you've done it. Age you done it. Date of birth, so you can say date of birth and you can just delete it and you say dot dob. It'll show you whatever variables are there guys. Okay, try to understand it. And then here student one dot not name, what is else like I want to do. Gender, have I done it? No, gender I haven't done, so let me give gender here. So student gender, what else it has, and the subject. So student subjects, so I'll say student one dot, okay, subjects. So see, it's not showing you subject specialist and all those things. Why? Because this is related with students. So once you get this, I did just for the student, you can do it for now let me run this. Okay, so this is the whole code actually in the main program, and when we run it, oh sorry, control F5 in this one. So control F5 and see, it's showing you that Amjad this, and it's working up for this one. Now I'm repeating this code. So similar, you try to print the lecturer one like that, similar you can try to do it guys. Okay, and you see that you'll get for the lectures. Now what, again, to wind up and to explain you the thing, see, just make you understand that if you have a class, like try to understand that if any data, like say name, age, address, all this one, if this something which is common to two class, instead of writing that same data, okay, in the two class, is better to make one class. Okay, get the getters and setters, and then create another class with whatever extra data you want to store it, do it. But since you want that, instead of copying and pasting, you say the word inherit. So what happens is that these things will physically, not you have to write it, but and doesn't come physically, but you have to understand that this is a part of that. So it saves you time, that not to rewrite the same variables and thing. And if the same thing is going to be used for the lecturer, so what happens is you just inherit the same thing, get part of that, integrated part of that one, but you don't have to physically write it, so it looks easier. Okay, the redundant is removed. Okay, you're reusing the code and you're adding extra features. This is the main use of inheritance, and this is one of the main fundamental of OOPS here. Okay, so I just showed you the concept. So what do you mean to say that now the same thing when you print it up, the same thing you repeat it, just copy it and paste it, and now print for lecturers T1, T2 like that. Okay, so once you're done, control F5, run, see if it's working nicely. That's it. So you got the concept of inheritance. Next class we'll teach you about polymorphism, and once we learn the polymorphism, then I'll start working on your assignments. Okay, so whatever the assignment is there, I will help you to make the application, so you don't need to worry about that one. Okay, so practice this and start working with the first question of the assignment brief, guys. Okay, so see you in next video then.